I had been invisible for 15 years. 15 years of birthday cards returned to sender. 15 years of voicemails that filled up mailboxes nobody bothered to empty. 15 years of showing up to events I wasn't invited to. Standing at the edges like a ghost nobody wanted to acknowledge. Happy birthday, Michael. I love you, sweetheart. Rebecca, it's your mother. Just calling to hear your voice. Please call me back when you have a chance. I miss you both so much, but the silence was always the same. Complete. Absolute. As if I had died, but nobody had bothered to tell me. This morning, I woke up in my cramped studio apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, the place I'd moved to after losing the house. The walls were bare except for a single photograph. Michael and Rebecca as children, building a snowman in our old backyard. Michael couldn't have been more than 6, Rebecca maybe 4. Their faces were red from the cold, their smiles genuine and uncomplicated. That was before everything fell apart. Before I became the woman they pretended didn't exist. I made myself instant coffee because the good stuff was too expensive. Now and sat by the window, overlooking the parking lot. Wednesday morning, gray sky, light rain. Just another day in a life that had become an endless waiting room, where my number would never be called. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. The same screen I'd been staring at for 15 years, hoping for something, anything, that never came. I opened my photo gallery and scrolled through pictures of gifts I'd sent. I always photographed them before mailing. Some desperate need to document my attempts at motherhood. Last Christmas, I'd sent Rebecca a cashmere scarf. Pale blue because that used to be her favorite color. $180 from my disability check. I never knew if she got it. 3 months ago, I sent Michael a first edition book I'd found at an estate sale. One of the fantasy novels he'd loved as a teenager. $275 I couldn't really afford. He never acknowledged it. Every holiday, every birthday, every milestone I could remember, I sent something. And every time the silence confirmed what I already knew. I didn't exist for them anymore. I got dressed in jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. At 64 years old, I'd stopped caring about impressions. What was the point? I went for my daily walk to the community park, a habit I'd developed to avoid going stir-crazy in my 400-square-foot apartment. In the park, I saw families everywhere, mothers pushing strollers, grandmothers chasing toddlers, multi-generational picnics with laughter echoing across the grass. I'd never met my grandchildren. Rebecca had 3. I'd discovered their names through a Facebook profile. I could view before she blocked me. Sophia, 8. The twins, Emma and Oliver, 5. Michael had 1 son, Lucas, 7 years old. 4 grandchildren who didn't know my name. 4 grandchildren who would grow up thinking grandmothers were something other people had, not them. I returned home just after noon and found something in my mailbox that made my hands shake. An envelope. Thick, expensive paper. Cream-colored with my name, my actual name, written in elegant calligraphy. Inside was an invitation. Rebecca's 40th birthday celebration, this Saturday evening at her home in Bellevue. Cocktail attire requested. I read it 3 times, searching for a personal note, a handwritten line, anything. There was nothing but the formal invitation, printed and impersonal. But after 15 years of nothing, this felt like a miracle. Hope. That dangerous, stupid thing I thought I'd killed years ago suddenly fluttered back to life in my chest. I spent the next 3 days in a frenzy of preparation. I went to a department store and bought a navy dress that was appropriate for cocktail attire. $165, which was more than I'd spent on clothing in the past 2 years combined. I got my hair done at a salon for the first time in forever. I bought a gift, a set of crystal wine glasses with Rebecca's initials engraved on them. $450. Nearly everything I had left after paying rent. But this was my chance to exist again, my chance to show them I was still here, still their mother, still worth knowing. Saturday arrived. I dressed carefully, applied makeup with a trembling hand, and put on the small diamond earrings that were the last reminder of my marriage. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman
never knew
who'd
if she got
aged
it.
badly. The stress had carved lines into my face, turned my hair more gray than brown. But I stood up straight. I had dignity, even if I had nothing else. I took an Uber because I couldn't afford to keep a car anymore. During the ride to Bellevue, I practiced what I would say. "Hi, sweetheart. Happy birthday." "Michael, it's so wonderful to see you." Simple words that shouldn't require rehearsal, but I'd forgotten how to talk to my own children. The driver dropped me off in front of a house that made my breath catch. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. A modern architectural masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows, perfectly manicured grounds, and a circular driveway where luxury cars were already parked. Rebecca had done well. Her husband, David Chen, was a tech executive. I knew this because I'd Googled her obsessively over the years, reading every scrap of information I could find. Society page mentions, charity gala attendance lists, LinkedIn updates about her interior design consulting firm, a perfect life that had no room for me. I walked toward the front door, my heart hammering. Before I could ring the bell, a young woman in a server's uniform opened it. "Come in," she said with a professional smile. "The party is in the great room and back patio." I followed her through a hallway that showcased abstract art worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The house was stunning. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, designer everything. I felt my cheap dress and department store shoes like weights dragging me down. The great room opened onto a massive covered patio overlooking Lake Washington. There had to be 75 people there. White-clothed tables with elaborate floral centerpieces. Servers circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A jazz quartet playing in the corner. String lights creating a warm glow as the evening settled in. It was magazine perfect, expensive, exclusive, and I, with my $165 dress and carefully wrapped gift, felt like I'd walked onto a movie set where I didn't belong. I spotted Rebecca immediately. She was holding court near the patio railing, surrounded by women in designer dresses. She looked radiant, her hair professionally styled, her black cocktail dress elegant and perfectly fitted. She'd inherited her father's height and my eyes, though hers held none of the warmth I remembered. I approached slowly, each step requiring more courage than I possessed. Rebecca saw me. Her smile froze for just a moment, something flickering across her face too quickly for me to read. Then the smile returned, practiced and perfect. "Mom," she said, air-kissing near my cheek, "you made it." The women around her turned to look at me with polite curiosity. "Everyone, this is my mother, Eleanor," Rebecca announced. The way she said it sounded like an apology. The women nodded, murmured polite greetings, then smoothly turned back to their previous conversation, excluding me as naturally
I never knew if
as
she
breathing.
got it.
Rebecca excused herself. She had other guests to greet, and left me standing there alone in a sea of strangers who clearly belonged to a world I would never enter. I found an empty chair at a table near the edge of the patio, far from the center of activity. From there I could observe without being in the way, which seemed to be my role here. Michael arrived about 20 minutes later. My son. 42 years old, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was a senior partner at a corporate law firm downtown. I knew because I'd kept track, the way you keep track of people you love, but who don't love you back. He came through the house with a group of men in similar expensive suits, all of them laughing at something. He was confident, successful, completely at ease. Our eyes met, just for a second. I saw the recognition, the acknowledgement that I existed. Then he turned his head and continued his conversation as if I were furniture, as if I were wallpaper. That's what 15 years of unanswered phone calls felt like in a single moment. A server offered me champagne. I took it to have something to occupy my hands. The champagne tasted bitter, though it was probably the kind these people didn't think twice about. I watched families everywhere. An older woman, probably my age, surrounded by what looked like her children and grandchildren. They hung on her every word, laughing at her stories, touching her arm affectionately. The pain in my chest was physical, sharp and real. That was supposed to be me. That was what I dreamed of when I raised my children. When I worked 2 jobs after their father abandoned us. When I stayed up all night with sick kids. When I sacrificed everything to make sure they had opportunities I never did. The memories came flooding back, unstoppable. Rebecca at 10, crying because kids at school made fun of her hand-me-down clothes. I'd worked extra shifts for 2 weeks to buy her new jeans and the sneakers she wanted. When she wore them to school, she hugged me and said, I was the best mom ever. Where was that little girl now? Michael at 14, angry and lost after his father left. He'd punch walls and skip school, heading down a dangerous path. I'd found him a mentor program, drove him to basketball practice at 6 a.m. before my shift started, sat through every game even when I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. He'd told me once that I saved his life. Apparently saving his life didn't earn me a place in it. The distance hadn't happened overnight. It was gradual, like a slow-moving disease you don't notice until it's too late. When Rebecca got married 12 years ago, I was still involved. I helped with wedding planning. I was in the family photos. I cried when she walked down the aisle. But after the wedding, the calls became less frequent. Weekly became monthly. Monthly became occasional. Occasional became never. When I asked if everything was okay, she always had reasons. David and I are traveling a lot for his work. I'm swamped with getting the business started. We're trying to have a baby and it's stressful. Always something more important than me. Michael got married 10 years ago. He invited me to the wedding, but I could tell it was obligatory. During the reception, he barely spoke to me. His wife, Andrea, was cold and distant. After that, contact dwindled to nothing. The birthdays were the worst part. Every year I sent cards with long letters telling them I loved them, I missed them, I wanted to be part of their lives. I sent gifts I researched carefully, spending money I didn't have. I never got a thank you, not a text, not an email, nothing. 7 years ago, I sent Rebecca an antique mirror I'd found at an auction. It was Art Deco, beautiful, exactly her style. It cost me $550, money I should have used to fix my car. I sent it with a note saying it reminded me of her, that I hoped it would bring beauty to her home. Months passed. No acknowledgement. Did she get it? Did she like it? Did it end up at Goodwill? For Michael's birthday 4 years ago, I bought him a vintage watch. He'd always loved watches as a kid, collecting them from thrift stores. This one was special, a 1960s Omega in perfect condition. $600 I saved for 6 months to afford. I sent it with a card that said, "Do you remember collecting watches together? I love you, son. Mom." Nothing, not a word. The holidays were unbearable. I spent every Christmas alone in my apartment, watching TV and trying not to think about Rebecca and Michael celebrating with their families, their children opening presents, creating memories I wasn't part of. 3 years ago, I showed up at Rebecca's house on Christmas Eve. I couldn't take the loneliness anymore. I rang the doorbell holding a bag of gifts for the grandchildren I'd never met. Rebecca opened the door. The look on her face, surprise that quickly became irritation. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to wish you Merry Christmas," I said, holding out the gifts. "I brought presents for the kids." She took the bag without looking inside. "Thanks, but we're in the middle of family dinner. I'll call you later, okay?" And she closed the door. I stood on her porch in the cold, listening to laughter and voices from inside. Family dinner. I was her family, and I was locked out. I walked to the bus stop because I couldn't afford a taxi on Christmas Eve. It took 2 buses and 90 minutes to get home. I arrived after midnight, took off my coat, and sat in the dark living room until morning came. That was the night I understood, really understood. It didn't matter how much I tried. It didn't matter how many gifts I sent. It didn't matter how many times I reached out. They had decided I didn't belong in their lives. I tried to talk about it once. 2 years ago, I managed to get Michael on the phone by calling from a number he didn't recognize. I never knew if she got it. I need to understand what happened, I said, my voice shaking. Why did you cut me out? Long silence, then a sigh of annoyance. Mom, you're being dramatic. We haven't cut you out. We're just busy. We have our own families now, our own lives. I'm not asking for much, I replied, trying to stay calm. Just occasional contact, just to know my grandchildren, just to matter a little. Look, Mom, he interrupted impatient. We're not kids anymore. We don't need you hovering over us constantly. You raised us, and we're grateful. But now you need to understand we have our own paths. It's not personal. Not personal. Those words echoed in my head for weeks. How could it not be personal when your own children erase you from their existence? That was the last real conversation we had. 2 years ago, sitting at this table at Rebecca's party, champagne untouched, gift still in my purse, I finally understood with brutal clarity. I hadn't been invited because Rebecca suddenly remembered she had a mother. I hadn't been invited out of love or genuine desire to reconnect. There was another reason. I could feel it in the air, in the careful glances, in the staged perfection of everything. The music continued. Conversations flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. I watched my children move through the crowd, perfect hosts, smiling, successful, surrounded by admirers. And I was just an uncomfortable reminder of a past they'd rather forget. I took another sip of champagne and let the memories continue washing over me. Rebecca's college graduation 20 years ago. I was in the front row, screaming and clapping when they called her name. Afterward, she hugged me and said, "Mom, everything I am is because of you." I'd clung to those words for years. But looking at her now, I wondered if she'd ever meant them. When Rebecca got pregnant with her first child, I found out 4 months in. Not from her, from a former neighbor who ran into her at a coffee shop. I called her immediately. "Sweetheart, I just heard you're pregnant. Why didn't you tell me?" Awkward pause. "I was going to, Mom. I've just been really busy with doctor appointments and everything." "When is the baby due? Can I help with anything? Can I come visit?" Short, evasive answers. "There's still time. We'll see. Everything's fine. Don't worry." She never invited me, never included me. When Sophia was born, I found out a week later. A week. My first grandchild had been alive for 7 days, and I didn't know. I found out because Michael mentioned it accidentally in a text he sent to the wrong number, mine instead of whoever he'd meant to reach. "Glad Rebecca and the baby are home and doing well." I replied immediately, asking what baby, when, what's her name. He called an hour later, annoyed. "Mom, I thought Rebecca told you. The baby was born last week. Her name is Sophia." I begged to visit. He said he'd check with Rebecca and let me know. It was 2 months before they let me come. 2 months of calling, pleading, being told, "Not yet, she's not ready for visitors." When I finally arrived with gifts I'd spent weeks shopping for, Rebecca met me at the door with the baby in her arms. She didn't invite me inside. "She's beautiful," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Can I hold her?" "She just fell asleep, Mom. Better not disturb her. I just wanted you to meet her." "I brought gifts." "Thanks, I'll look at them later." She took the bags without glancing at them. "I need to go. Feeding time soon." That was it. 5 minutes at her doorstep, my first meeting with my granddaughter. I cried the entire bus ride home. Cried for this child who would never know me, who would grow up thinking grandmothers were people other kids had. When the twins were born 2 years later, I didn't wait to be told. I checked Rebecca's social media obsessively until I saw the announcement. Emma and Oliver. I sent flowers to the hospital. I never knew if they arrived. I sent gifts. Expensive baby clothes I'd saved months to afford. No confirmation they were received. Just silence, the same silence that had been my companion for years. With Michael's son Lucas, It was worse. His wife Andrea had blocked me on everything. I found out about Lucas 3 months after he was born through a mutual acquaintance's Facebook post. 3 months. My family celebrating a new life, and I didn't even know he existed. I went to their house unannounced, just like I'd done with Rebecca. I rang the doorbell repeatedly. I could see movement behind the curtains, but no one answered. I stood there for 30 minutes, knocking, calling out, until a neighbor came out and asked if I needed help. "I'm waiting for my son," I said, humiliation burning my face. "I don't think anyone's home," she said kindly, even though we both knew it was a lie. My children preferred to hide from me rather than face me for 5 minutes. Birthdays were torture. I sent gifts religiously, toys, books, clothes. I spent money I couldn't afford, trying to buy even a small space in their lives. I never knew if my grandchildren opened those gifts. Probably Rebecca and Michael received them and donated them or threw them away without telling the kids who sent them. Easier to erase me completely. 2 years ago, I sent Sophia a bicycle for her 6th birthday. A beautiful purple bike with streamers and a basket. $425 that took me 4 months to save. The card said, "To my dear granddaughter, I hope you love riding this as much as your mom loved her first bike. I love you even though we don't know each other. Your grandmother, Eleanor." Did Sophia get that bike? Did she read my card? Or did Rebecca throw it away before she could see it? Probably the latter. Easier to maintain the narrative that Grandma just wasn't around, rather than admit they deliberately excluded me. I looked across the patio to where Rebecca was now, laughing with her elegant friends. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever remembered the woman who raised her alone, who worked herself to exhaustion to give her everything she needed. I remembered the nights I worked as a cashier at a grocery store, then cleaned offices until 2 a.m., just to afford the private school Rebecca wanted to attend. My hands would crack and bleed from the cleaning chemicals. But I kept going because I wanted my daughter to have opportunities I never had. I remembered when Michael struggled with reading in 3rd grade. The tutoring cost $90 an hour. I took a weekend job waitressing at a diner just to pay for those sessions. My feet would swell so badly I could barely walk. But he was my son. I wanted him to succeed. And they did succeed. Rebecca with her mansion and successful business. Michael with his law partnership and expensive suits. They went so far they left me behind like roadside trash. Something that had served its purpose and was no longer needed. I felt something new besides the pain. Anger. Cold, clear anger waking up after years of dormancy beneath layers of sadness. I'd spent 15 years begging for scraps, sending gifts like I could buy a place in their hearts, and they'd been ignoring me deliberately, cruelly. A server placed appetizers on the table. Expensive food for people who probably wouldn't appreciate it because they were used to this level of luxury. I thought about my refrigerator at home, nearly empty, carefully rationed to make my limited funds last. I thought about the $425 bicycle that probably ended up at a garage sale. The anger grew. Not explosive anger, cold, calculating anger. The anger of someone finally seeing the truth clearly. My children hadn't forgotten me accidentally. They'd actively chosen to erase me. They'd chosen not to answer my calls, chosen not to respond to my messages, chosen to keep their children from me, chosen to close doors in my face, literally and figuratively. And I, like a fool, had kept begging. But sitting here at this party where I clearly didn't belong, something broke inside me, not painfully, liberatingly. I realized I didn't want to keep begging, didn't want to keep being invisible to the people who were supposed to love me most. I was lost in these thoughts when I saw David, Rebecca's husband, step onto a small platform they'd set up near the patio railing. He was tall, confident, with that air of authority that success brings. He tapped a glass with a knife, and gradually conversation stopped. "Good evening, everyone," David began in his practiced public speaking voice. Thank you for celebrating my incredible wife on this milestone birthday." Applause rippled through the crowd. Rebecca joined him on the platform, radiant in her black dress that probably cost more than I earned in 2 months. They kissed while everyone applauded, and something twisted in my stomach. David talked about their life together, their plans for the future. I listened distractedly, still trying to understand why I'd been invited after all this time. Then David said something that made me pay attention. "I also want to make an important announcement tonight," he said, looking out at the guests. Michael walked up and joined them on the platform. The 3 of them looked perfect, successful, happy, like a magazine photograph. "As many of you know," David continued, "Rebecca and I, along with Michael, have been working on an exciting family investment opportunity." He paused dramatically. My heart started beating faster. "We're thrilled to announce that we've found the perfect property, 20 acres in the San Juan Islands, where we're planning to build a family compound. A place where our family can gather, create memories, strengthen our bonds for generations to come." Enthusiastic applause. I sat frozen. "Family." He said family, but I didn't know anything about this. Michael took the microphone. "I've been handling all the legal aspects of this acquisition," he said in his professional attorney voice. "This isn't just property. It's a legacy we're building for our children and our children's children. The Anderson Chen family compound." More applause. The cold anger intensified. Anderson Chen. My maiden name was Mitchell. I'd given them the last name Anderson when I married their father, but I wasn't included in this legacy. Rebecca took the microphone. "And to make this truly special," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "we want this to be something we all participate in financially." Then she looked directly at me. When our eyes met, her smile widened, but something in it made my skin crawl. "Mom," she said, pointing at me, "why don't you come up here?" 75 pairs of eyes turned to me. I couldn't move. "Come on, Mom," Rebecca insisted. "Don't be shy." My legs barely responded, but I stood. I walked toward the platform, feeling every gaze burning into me. I climbed the steps carefully, my shoes clicking against the wood. Rebecca put her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that might look affectionate to anyone who didn't know our history. "Here she is," Rebecca announced. "My mother, Eleanor. After so many years, she's finally here with us." Something about the way she said it sounded false, rehearsed. David continued. "As I was saying, we want this to be a true family investment. Everyone contributing makes everyone invested in this legacy." My heart pounded. Michael looked directly at me. "Mom, I know you sold the house a few years ago, the one where you lived after Dad left." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. How did he know? I'd sold that house 6 years ago when I could no longer afford the upkeep. I'd used the money to move into my current apartment and had managed to save what was left. "We've been thinking," Rebecca said, squeezing my shoulder harder than necessary, "that it would be wonderful if you could contribute your savings toward this family investment. That way you'd have ownership in the compound too. You could visit anytime, spend time with your grandchildren finally." Everything clicked into place like a macabre puzzle. This was why they'd invited me. Why after 15 years of silence, I'd suddenly received an elegant invitation. Not because they missed me, not because they'd realized they had a mother, because they needed my money. "How much do you have from that house sale, Mom?" Michael asked as if we were in a business meeting, not on a patio in front of 75 strangers. I couldn't speak. The words stuck in my throat. David intervened with a practiced smile. "Look, Eleanor, I know this might be surprising, but think about it. It's a way to secure your place in the family, an investment in your grandchildren's future. And of course, you'd have full access to the property whenever you wanted." Lies. I could see it in their eyes, in how they avoided looking at me directly. "We're putting in the majority of the funds," Rebecca added, "but we thought you'd want to be part of this. After all, it's your family." Your family. Those words sounded hollow from someone who hadn't called me in 15 years. Who'd closed the door in my face, who'd blocked my number. Michael pulled out a folder. "I've already prepared all the documents," he said with professional efficiency. "We just need your signature here, and authorization for the wire transfer. We're talking about $125,000, right, Mom? That's approximately what you cleared from the sale after buying your apartment." I still couldn't speak. $125,000. It was exactly what I had left. How did they know? How had they investigated my finances? The answer was obvious. Michael was a lawyer. He had resources, connections. He'd looked into my private financial information without my knowledge or permission. They'd planned this meticulously. The invitation after 15 years, the elegant party, the public announcement, all designed to pressure me, to make me feel that I'd finally have a place in the family if I just handed over my life savings. "Come on, Mom," Rebecca said with barely concealed impatience. "It's not complicated. It's a great investment. Property values in the San Juans are skyrocketing. Plus, you'll finally be able to bond with your grandchildren properly." Yes, that was what I'd always wanted. But not like this. Not bought with everything I had. Not as part of a calculated scheme where I was just an ATM they'd finally decided to access. All the guests watched expectantly. Some smiled, thinking they were witnessing a heartwarming moment. Others looked uncomfortable, sensing the tension. I looked at my two children. Rebecca in her designer dress and her perfect life. Michael in his expensive suit with his professional demeanor. I'd raised them alone after their father left. I'd fed them, clothed them, educated them. I'd worked until my hands bled and my feet couldn't support me. I'd sacrificed everything to give them opportunities. And now they stood before me, demanding the last thing I had left. Not asking, demanding, with calculated public pressure. I looked at the folder Michael held with documents already prepared. How convenient that he had everything ready. How convenient that he knew exactly how much money I had. How convenient that they'd chosen to do this in front of witnesses, betting I'd be too polite, too embarrassed, too desperate for approval to say no. For 15 years, I'd begged for their attention. I'd pleaded for any sign that I mattered. In 15 years, they'd given me nothing. Not their time, not their love, not even an occasional text. But now that they needed something from me, suddenly family mattered. Suddenly there were invitations and smiles and talk about creating memories together. "So, Mom," David asked, breaking the silence, "what do you say? Do you want to be part of this family project?" All eyes on me. Rebecca, Michael, David, and 75 guests waiting for my answer. In that moment, something inside me that had been cracking for years finally broke completely. But it didn't break painfully. It broke liberatingly, like chains falling off, like a door opening, like waking from a nightmare and realizing I finally had control. I looked at them, one by one. I saw the greed in David's eyes, the impatience on Rebecca's face, the cold calculation in Michael's expression. And something inside me said, enough. Enough begging. Enough pleading. Enough sending gifts into the void. Enough unanswered calls. Enough pretending things would change. Enough clinging to hope that my children would remember who raised them. Enough being invisible. Enough being convenient only when they needed something. My breathing calmed. My heart stopped racing. A cold, perfect clarity settled over me. I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I was going to disappear completely, permanently. But first, I had to get off this platform with what little dignity I had left. I took a deep breath and looked Rebecca in the eyes. "I need to think about it," I said. My voice came out firm and clear, surprising even me. Rebecca's face tensed. "Mom, there's not much to think about. It's an incredible opportunity. The property is being sold soon. We need to close this week." "This week, of course. The pressure wasn't accidental," Michael intervened, pulling a pen from his pocket. "Look, Mom, if you sign now, I can process everything Monday morning. It's straightforward. I just need authorization to access your account for the transfer." Access to my account. They wanted access to my bank account, the only security I had left. No, I said simply. The word left my mouth before I could overthink it. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. David let out a nervous laugh. What do you mean, no, Eleanor? This is for your benefit, too. For my benefit? I repeated, feeling the cold anger solidify inside me. For my benefit would have been a phone call, even once in 15 years. For my benefit would have been meeting my grandchildren. For my benefit would have been being invited into your lives, not just to this party when you need my money. Rebecca and Michael's faces hardened. Guests started murmuring. Mom, don't do this here, Rebecca said through gritted teeth. Don't make a scene. A scene? I wasn't the one who'd organized this public ambush. I wasn't the one who'd planned to humiliate me in front of 75 strangers. I wasn't the one who'd investigated my finances behind my back. Please, let's discuss this privately, David said, glancing nervously at the guests. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. I'm not signing anything. I'm not giving you my money. And now I'm leaving. I stepped down from the platform without waiting for a response. My legs shook, but they moved, one foot in front of the other. I heard Rebecca calling after me. I didn't turn around. I heard footsteps following. I didn't stop. I reached the chair where I'd been sitting, grabbed my purse with the gift I'd never deliver, and walked toward the exit. Michael caught up with me before I reached the house. He grabbed my arm firmly. You can't leave like this, Mom. Let go of me, I said, trying to pull away. You need to understand something, he continued, his voice low and threatening. That compound is a smart investment. If you don't participate, don't expect to ever have access. Don't expect to visit us there. Don't expect to be part of family gatherings. I don't expect anything from you, I said, looking directly at him. I haven't expected anything for 15 years. And you know what? I finally understand. You didn't forget me. You chose to forget me. And I chose to keep begging like a fool. But that's over. Something in my tone must have surprised him because he released my arm. Mom, he started, but I interrupted. Don't call me Mom. Mothers get phone calls from their children. Mothers know their grandchildren. Mothers are part of their families' lives. I'm not your mother. I'm just someone with money that suddenly interests you. I turned and kept walking. This time no one stopped me. I left that house, that perfect party, that farce of a family celebration. I called an Uber from the street and waited under the entrance lights while the party continued inside as if nothing had happened. Probably David was already making another toast, distracting guests, saving face. When the car arrived, I got in and gave my address. I looked out the window as we drove away from that lit mansion. And in that moment, with a clarity I'd never had before, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to disappear. For real. Completely. And when I did, it would be in such a way that they could never, ever find me or access what was mine. The car moved through dark streets, and I felt like every mile taking me away from that house was a mile toward freedom, toward my new life, toward the woman I should have been 15 years ago when the silence began. Better late than never. I arrived at my apartment after midnight. I took off the navy dress and folded it carefully, knowing I'd never wear it again. I put on my old bathrobe and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't intend to drink. I just needed something warm in my hands while my mind worked with unprecedented clarity. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel sadness. I felt pure, cold determination. I took out a notebook and started writing a list. Not emotional,